If you were watching last week's episode of AutoEV, and if you weren't, why not? Anyway, you'd have seen my road test of the new BMW i4 eDrive 35. It's the new lead-in to the i4 range from BMW. It has a smaller battery than our current favourite i4, the eDrive 40, which means it has less range and it's a less powerful motor. Yet this test car still costs in excess of £60,000. Now, way back when, as I alluded to last week, to own a BMW was something that few had the means to do in some respects. But such has been the success of the company, their market share has grown considerably in the UK. They now have a bigger market share in the UK than people like Ford, Vauxhall, Toyota, Honda, Citroën, Peugeot, Renault. You know, they're no longer sort of like that exclusive sort of like brand, despite the fact that the price remains high. So here's the question that I posed. If you want to stand out from the crowd nowadays, why not save yourself a little bit of money and go for something like this, the new BYD Seal Excellence, which is a bigger battery, does more range, is more powerful, and is considerably faster, yet costs a significant amount less than the BMW? Or is the allure of that blue and white propeller just too much for you? Well, hopefully in this week's twin test, we're going to answer that question for you. So I say welcome back to the BMW i4 eDrive 35, welcome back to the new BYD Seal Excellence, and as always, welcome back to AutoEV. Now, before we get started on this week's twin test between the BMW i4 eDrive 35 and the BYD Seal Excellence, usual rules do apply. Make sure you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button down below, because then that way you'll get a notification of when our next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you've watched it, if you do enjoy it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And of course, this is important, don't forget, leave us your comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on the cars that we're reviewing, such as the BMW i4 and BYD Seal, maybe which one you would choose, and of course on the AutoEV channel as a whole. All right, well look, as I say, we've road tested the BMW i4 eDrive 35 in last week's episode, and in fairness, we've tested pretty much all the iPhone models, the eDrive 40, which we put up against its other main rivals, the Polestar 2 and the Tesla Model 3 a couple of years ago. And of course we've driven the BMW i4 M50, the most powerful model, and BMW's first sort of like electric powered M car. Let me get that the right way around. And of course we've also done a road test review on the new BYD Seal. But in fairness, the BYD Seal, when I did road test that car, I had a day with it up in the Lake District and the weather was atrocious. So I wanted to get the car back, and it was kind of at the same time I had this car and I thought it posed that question. You know, as I say, there used to be something quite special about owning a BMW. You know, as I say, not many people did it. You know, it was something, you know, it was an aspirational car. It maybe still is to a lot of people. I don't want to trivialise it. But as I say, there's more and more of them around now because they've become so popular. So if you do want to sort of, let's say, stand out a little bit from the crowd, or you don't want to follow that particular herd of sheep, what do you choose? Well, of course, now there's this, the BYD Seal. And for a lot less money than the lead-in model to the i4 range, you get the top of the range BYD Seal, which is a bigger battery, more range, more powerful, and a lot faster for a lot less money. But of course, as I say, there's a stigma, isn't it? It's the badge appeal, and we've spoken about this quite a few times with road test reviews. Do you still want a BMW? Or, as I say, a little bit more cost savvy these days, and you'll say, do you know what? I'm going to save myself some money and get myself a BYD. Let's find out. Now, as I say, we have tested both of these cars before, but let's just remind ourselves about the main points of both of them. Well, both cars are D-segment compact sports saloons that compete with the likes of the Tesla Model 3, the Polestar 2, Volkswagen's ID7 and the Hyundai Ioniq 6. The BMW i4 eDrive 35 is fitted with a 67 kWh battery delivering up to 288 miles on a charge, whereas the BYD Excellence has a larger 82 kWh battery allowing up to 323 miles. The BMW has a single rear-mounted motor delivering 280 brake horsepower, but the BYD counters with dual motors and all-wheel drive and 523 brake horsepower. And the Seal Excellence that this car is costs just over £48,000, with the i4 eDrive 35 starting at just under £51,000. So the BYD goes further, goes faster for a lot less money. But would you really choose what is still a relatively unknown brand in the UK over the established and, dare I say, desirable BMW? Well, of course, the only way we're going to find that out is by putting them head to head in the road test review that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric car. And that is the AutoEV one. Now, obviously, we've road tested both cars before in separate videos. I will put links up to those videos once you finish this one. If you want to go and watch them, then please, by all means, go and do that. But I will recap on a few bits and pieces. And of course, we're going to start with styling. But I won't go in too in depth because I say we've pretty much already done it. So, BMW i4. What have we got? Well, as I say, it's the i4 we've been familiar with, and we've seen it before in eDrive 40 and M50 guises. And what I did say last week is I think BMW styling is starting to sort of like, I'm starting to get used to it. I mean, as I say, they're quite a common sight now, the 4 Series, because this is what the i4 essentially is. It's a 4 Series Grand Coupe. It's not a bespoke electric car, it is a converted combustion engine car. However, as I say, because of that familiarity we're seeing, I think we're starting to get used to the styling a little bit more. What do you think? Of course, you get your usual BMW signature at the front, the double kidney grille. That's not a grille. Well, it sort of is, because the top bit is blanked off. The bottom bit's for cooling. You also get the little radar sensor in there as well. You get your BMW roundel that's circumferenced in blue to signify that it's the electric car. These lovely kind of swept back headlights, you know, the twin lights that you've always had with the 3 Series, and obviously now the 4 Series, but obviously behind the single lens, and some nice airflow management that comes round there and takes airflow round the side of the car. This particular colour is a metallic white called mineral white. It's an option on the car, and as I say, I'm starting to get used to the styling of it. But maybe it's a bit over familiar now. I don't know. Maybe the BYD's a sharper looking thing. Who knows? But let's have a look around the rest of it. So yeah, like I said, familiar BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe, which means you get this lovely kind of 5-door fastback design. You get the frameless doors as well, which I always think is quite nice. 17-inch wheels standard on the base Sport. M Sport gets 18s, and of course you can option up to 19s. These are the 18s because this is an M Sport model, and I do think these are probably the best in terms of chassis dynamics, in terms of handling, comfort as well. Nice flush door handles, privacy glass at the back, sunroof, shark fin aerial, and as I say, swept back into this fastback design. Nothing to really stand the car out from another 4 Series Grand Coupe. Good looking car. Well, as I say, BMW's had a controversial kind of reputation for styling over the last few years, but they can't afford to be too radical with this car because it really is the jewel in the crown, and there's some good looking cars in this class as well. Let's take a look at the BYD, because that is one of them. So BYD styling. Third product they've launched in the UK, the Seal, after the Atto 3, their sort of like compact crossover, and the Dolphin, the C-Sector 5-door hatchback. And none of them really look the same. They're all very much their own style. Now the Atto is a bit, you know, it does the job, you know. The Dolphins, I'm not the biggest fan of the Dolphin. The Seal, however, gosh, I mean, this is a market sector they cannot afford to get wrong. So none of gimmicky, nothing fancy, nothing sort of like too sort of like chintzy or anything like that. It's a very much a style-driven category, and I say we've seen that with BMW, and of course Polestar, really classy design. Hyundai with the Ioniq 6, very kind of avant-garde, but very different to the rest of the Hyundai models, and a really good-looking car in my opinion. Tesla's probably been on a little bit on the bland side, maybe is the same with Volkswagen with the ID7. They've played it very safe. BYD sits somewhere in the middle. I think you've got a really sharp looking car here. Now this was designed by a man called Wolfgang Egger. He's ex-Alfa Romeo. I think he was also ex-Audi as well. So good CV, and this is the thing with some of these new brands. They are attracting some real talent into them, so they're very much a serious player. It's got what they sort of call the X sort of like front to it. You know, you can see that sort of like bit there and the same bit there. None of this silly build your dreams. You know, the badge is sort of like inlaid to the front of the car, and this beautiful kind of daytime running light graphic here. You know, the sort of like the different kind of, just a nice almost kind of waves that kind of plays on their kind of ocean theme. Really sharp headlight design there as well, with sort of like turn indicators down there. There's a bit of Porsche Taycan at the front here. I mean, I know if you're a regular viewer, I've been very critical of Tesla's design. The new Model 3 is a lot better looking than the previous generation, but this thing, this knocks it into a cocked hat as far as I'm concerned. I think this is a great looking car. Just this really nice sharp line that just comes in here as well. Beautiful, really nicely integrated little front camera there. Obviously cooling down at the bottom as you'd expect, and just a nice sort of like sculpted bonnet going up there. Good looking car, this. Now inside profile, again, handsome looking car. Does hide a little bit the design details when it comes in this black, but I do like this black. It looks quite sophisticated, I think. It doesn't look cheap and chintzy, as I say. There's a good design going on here. This arrowhead here, this is quite nice because it's got a line that, it's difficult to see in the black, but in the lighter colour cars you can really see that line that comes in. It's like an arrow shooting forwards. So I'm told anyway. Now, interestingly, there's two models in the BYD Seal range. There's the lead-in design model, or there's this, the Excellence, which is the all-wheel drive one, the faster one. But visually, like the BMW, you really can't, and I know, of course, the other cars in the class, you know, the same with the Tesla Model 3 and the other cars, you can't really tell them apart. They are identical on the outside to look at. There's no trim levels available in the BYD, so you don't get Sport and kind of M Sport like you do in the BMW. You just get either design or Excellence, and their equipment levels are pretty much identical, bar a couple of little things, which means you get the 19-inch wheels as standard, which is nice. Now, interestingly, this car's on Continental tyres. When I drove the car at its launch in Cumbria at the end of last year, it was on different tyres than this, and one of the things I criticised the car for was a lot of road noise and harsher surfaces. So it will be interesting to see what it's like on these Continentals, because they did say they were changing the tyres, and that's what they are now. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, door mirrors, you get the pop-out kind of door handles, which are nice and chunky there. Framed doors that you get on the car. Oh, I've just locked it. Let me do that. There you go, they pop out, you get the BYD symbol. They feel really solid, and the same when you shut the door. It's not a clang, it's a proper thunk. Remember that word? Thunk. Do you remember the Golf advert? Sounds like a Golf? Sounds like a Golf. Panoramic roof, standard on the car, and then it sweeps back into the rear screen here. Now, it's a booted saloon, it's not a fastback, which we'll see in a second. And again, little kind of design tricks here, the little kind of gill design there, and then the same down at the bottom here, down at this lower sill, the kind of, almost kind of gill sections here that goes with their ocean theme. Yeah, so as I say, booted saloon. Boot release down there, just a little button that's on there, a bit like my old Renault Megane E-Tech long-termer. Oh, how I miss that car. Anyway, love the looking at the back. Gorgeous light design at the back with these kind of little detail on these lights, like they've got at the front as well. So really, really nice. A little bit bland maybe there. You know, there's no sort of like badging. There's BYD Seal and 3.8S, which I'll explain in a second, and that's it. So maybe a little bit bland from the rear. If it didn't have that on it, if you debadged it, would you know what you were following? You know, whereas at least the BMW gets the big roundel. I'm surprised that they didn't put the BYD there like they did at the front, but thankfully there isn't the kind of build your dreams statement across the back. Bit overstyled diffuser area here, that's the only thing I will say. I think that's a little bit unnecessary, this kind of diffuser area here with these kind of lower lights, reversing lights and such. But on the whole, a really, really good looking car, I think. And as I say, best looking car that BYD have come out with so far in the UK. But is it enough to tempt you away from the BMW in terms of looks alone? Which one would you rather be seen driving around? Of course, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. So I promised to tell you what 3.8S means. Well, that's the only way you can tell that this is the Excellence model. And the reason for that is it's 0 to 60 time, 3.8 seconds. If you go for the design, it says 5.8S at the back, because that's its 0 to 60 time. Quirky, I like that. Now, when it comes to practicality, it is the BMW that betters the BYD. The BYD has a 400 litre boot, which is okay. It's fine in terms of space, but of course, it is limited by this opening, of course, the same with the Tesla Model 3, because of course it's a booted saloon as well. You do get some decent underfloor storage, and like the Tesla and the other cars in the class, you get space up at the front as well, an additional 53 litres. But the BMW counters with 470 litres of boot space, and the fact that it's a fastback means that it's a lot easier to load things in. So despite not having room up at the front, the BMW is a little bit more practical. Now the BYD does claw back a lot of ground in the practicality section when it comes to rear seat space, because as we saw in last week's road test review of the BMW, it is quite tight back there. It's okay for sort of like smaller adults like me, or maybe for children of 4 people. But if you're using it, dare I suggest, as a family car, or you maybe use a business car and you're taking sort of like more kind of adults around with you, the BYD certainly is more accommodating. You get a good amount of legroom. I mean, that's my driving position. I'm 5'8". There's a good amount of the room under the seat is quite tight, however. I do like my seat quite low, but there is very little room sort of like underneath the seat. But even so, you can tuck your legs back up. There's enough space here, and you get a completely flat floor across because it's the bespoke platform. Platform 3.0, I think BYD call it, with their innovative blade battery, which I'll talk about in the usability section. Anyway, it's by far the more accommodating car of the two. Plus as well, you get this stunningly big panoramic glass roof you get in the car that goes right back behind your head. So when you're actually sat here and you look up, it's not here, it's way behind you. So all you just see is the sky, which is phenomenal. I think it's great. As I say, there's room for 3 across. The ISOFIX points are nice and easy to get to. They're just little kind of rubber bungs where the seat just goes in. There's a bit of storage in there. There's 2 USB-C charger ports in behind this little flop down flap. You get map pockets in the backs of the front seats, plus sort of like, you know, additional pockets above for, like, so they say, phones and such like. Fold down armrests with cup holders and door bins, which will also take another water bottle as well. So as I say, in terms of rear accommodation, it is the BYD that takes the victory in that sector. Now, as we saw last week, the i4 is all right in the back, but it's nowhere near as accommodating as the BYD or some other cars in its class, such as the Volkswagen ID7, the Tesla Model 3, Hyundai Ioniq 6. Polestar 2 is better than the i4, but it's probably not as good as all those others, and certainly nowhere near as good as the BYD. But back here, let me quickly recap. It's okay, as I say, that I'm 5'8", as I said, that's my driving position. I can sit behind myself. I do feel my legs are pushed up a little bit. There is a little bit more room underneath the seat though, for my feet, but of course there's no flat floor. You've got this transmission tunnel that runs through the car because it's based on a combustion engine platform, which means 3 across is a bit of a no-no, in fairness, unless they're pretty small kids. ISOFIX points, nice and easy to get to. They're the usual BMW kind of plastic flaps. And the seat itself is actually quite comfortable. You know, it's all right. You've also got the fold-down armrest, like you do in the BYD, with a flip-up cup holder tray, or you can cover it if you want. But the added benefit with the BMW, you do have that load-through facility. So as I say, if you're carrying longer loads and you still want 2 rear passengers, the BYD can't do that. It's your 60-40 split rear seat, whereas the BMW, you can do it, which is quite good as well. Storage is okay, again, kind of nets on the backs of the front seats, slightly bigger door bins, and I say cup holders in the centre armrest. There's USB-C connectivity and rear climate control here. It would be nice to see maybe a panoramic roof in here. As it is, it's an optional sunroof, which is above the front 2 seats. And because of that, as I said last week in the review, when you're sat here like this, you are aware of this lower roof section. Even someone at my short height, you're just aware that that is quite kind of close to kind of your head, even though it scallops out and there's a reasonable amount of headroom. But if you're encroaching on something like 6 foot or above, then you're going to find the back of the BMW really tight. So as I say, as it is, in terms of rear accommodation, whilst the BMW has the bigger boot, in terms of rear accommodation, the BYD takes the victory. Did I just say BYT? Or did I say BYD? Hopefully I said BYD. Now, as I say, we've covered extensively the interior of both the cars in their separate road tests, so I won't go too in depth in this one. I'll just do a quick synopsis of it and give you sort of like the things we like and maybe we don't like with regards to the interiors of both cars. Right, the first thing that I want to talk about with the BMW is its driving position, because it is superb. You really sit low in the car. It's a proper sports saloon. It's typical BMW. You really feel, and it's going to sound corny, but you feel kind of connected with the car. You know, you sit low, you've got a nice steering wheel in front of you that adjusts for reach and rake. These seats kind of wrap around you. Okay, this is the M Sport, but you get extendable squab, this nice kind of steering wheel which doesn't feel too thick on this particular car, which I do like. I've always been critical of BMW's wheels for feeling too thick. It's not bad on this one. Yeah, so there's a real mixture in here between sort of like, dare I suggest, previous generation BMW and then new generation BMW, which my colleague Charlie commented on when he drove the i4, saying he wasn't quite sure it worked as well. It's all right. What I will say is if you're used to BMW, you'll get on well with it, because, you know, if you're coming from a 3 Series or a 5 Series or, you know, 4 Series coupe or whatever, this is going to feel quite familiar to you. So of course you get your twin displays, your infotainment up here, which you can either control through the touch screen. There's all your tiles there, so going into things like, you know, to adjust your settings or CarPlay or whatever, or your charging, climate control menu, driver settings, that's all in there. You can also use the familiar iDrive controller, which is also quite a nice thing. It's very tactile. It's like a nice kind of bezel on a diver's watch. You know, it's got the knurled kind of sort of like rim to it, and it's just nice. I prefer that to sort of like the new crystal one you do in the bigger models, but I do like them. But this is nice. I like this one. Anyway, there is a lot going on in there. But again, as I say, if you're used to BMW, you'll know a lot about it. And as I say, once you kind of find out what everything is and get it all set up, it's very rare you're going to go into that and use it. You do get wireless Apple CarPlay. There's also in this particular car wireless charging, but that's an option, believe it or not, as is this sunroof. And there's a few options in this car which we'll discuss with price, because that's obviously what the big contention is here. These controls grouped around here are fairly straightforward. You know, you've obviously got your shortcut buttons for the infotainment system. You've also got your things like dynamic stability control, and then your driving modes, Sport, Comfort and Eco Pro. Start stop button, little sort of like selector for the transmission, and that's there. There's some physical controls in the front. You can see you've got storage for coffee cup and water flask, but the piano black kind of veneer I'm not very keen on makes an appearance here. So there we go, but it's all right. Sorry, these controls here, yeah, you get your media search, physical volume, your your hazard warning lights, and then maximum defrost front screen and heated rear screen. There's USB connectivity there. There's also USB-C within this armrest. This particular one has the heated steering wheel as well because of the Comfort Plus pack or something, so that's nice there. And it's all physical buttons. There's no kind of touch sensitive things on here, which is quite nice. You can adjust the driver display. You can change that depending obviously on what you want to see. So you can, you just turn it, this little scroll wheel, so if you want the nav duplicated over there, or you want media content up there, you can have it, and you can change the way of that. Plus you can also change the head-up display depending obviously on what you want to see. So it's really nice the way you can configure it all, and it's really easy to get on with. But I also understand it's not maybe quite as that's kind of futuristic, maybe as you say, as you get in, like, so say, the Tesla, and maybe in some ways the BYD. The Google operating system you get in the Polestar 2 is a particular favourite of mine, so I do sort of prefer that. But it has to be said, the fact that this is kind of wireless CarPlay, and as I say, if you've been used to BMW, then as I say, it's quite easy to get on with, so I do like that. The build quality is superb, as you'd expect. The use of materials is lovely, but again, you've got to option things up. You know, this is the Vernasca leather, oyster leather that's on this car. That's an option that comes on the car. But as I say, it's typical BMW in terms of its build quality. The surfaces feel nice, all your touch points, apart from that kind of piano black, kind of glossy black veneer, all the other touch points are nice. The handles for the door, everything feels solid, as you would expect for a BMW. So the summary is this: if you like BMW interiors, there's nothing not to like with this one. Once you get used to, and once you set everything up in there, that's as simple as you like to use. You do get, as I say, the choice of using either sort of like this rotary dial or using it as a touch screen, which is nice. So it suits kind of both preferences. The build quality is superb, and it's very, very comfortable. But the main point to take away from it is it feels like a proper driver's BMW sitting here in the driver's seat, and I think that's important. So, jumping into the BYD Seal, what's the kind of first thing that sort of like stands out? It's the quality, and not in a bad way. It's good. Look, it's not as good as the BMW. Let me just say that first and foremost. It's not as good as the Polestar 2. But if you're thinking on the lines of Tesla Model 3, Hyundai Ioniq 6, it's there. That's the sort of level it's at. So there are bits around it that which you really can sort of like tell don't feel quite as nice. Let me talk about those first. It's this kind of shiny kind of plastic here. It's built well, it's fine, you know, it's solid. It's just that it's not particularly nice to the touch. And there's a tiny little bit on the door. The rest of the door, there's sort of like almost like a kind of rubberized kind of vinyl to it, which is actually quite nice. It's quite tactile, I quite like it. And you also get that nice kind of Alcantara strip around the doors there. It's not as quirky as the Atto 3 and the Dolphin in here. Again, like the outside styling, they're playing to the marketplace that appeals with the i4 and the Polestar and the Hyundai, as in people don't want gimmicks and things, they want something nice, stylish and well built in this class. And that is on the whole what you get with the Seal. Like the Tesla, everything's controlled through this centre mounted sort of like infotainment screen. There are some physical buttons like the BMW that are kind of grouped around the little almost kind of Volvo-like kind of crystal transmission toggle. So things like your auto hold, your dynamic stability, your mode button, auto climate and volume. That's nice, that's just grouped there. And then again, nice little groupings there on the steering wheel, which is a really nice wheel. It's a really nice size. I'd say it's on a par with the BMW for tactility, the way it holds, slightly flattened at the bottom. Anyway, as I say, everything's controlled through this screen, which is touchscreen. It's fairly quick to respond. You do get Apple CarPlay, you do get Android Auto, but it's wired, both of those. But you also have an inbuilt Spotify app, so you can just if it's just the Spotify you're using it for, then obviously you can go into that for there. The sort of like the default embedded navigation is all right. It's quite decent. But obviously, as I say, you can use Waze or Google Maps or Apple Maps if you've got it wired in there. So that's all right. It's much bigger, obviously, than the BMW's display, so it's much easier to see. Plus, there's obviously its party trick, where if you press the button, the screen will rotate. If you prefer it in portrait mode, which maybe for navigation you may well do, then you can have that. And like I said in the original road test, that screen does not feel flimsy. That doesn't feel like it's about to fall off. That's pretty well screwed on there. So that is good. You can also do it from the steering wheel as well. There are a couple of annoyances with the car, but I'll leave those for when we're driving it, because it is to do with driving it. So let's stick with the actual interior itself. Good driving position. The seats are comfortable. They're not quite as figure hugging as the BMW. And they don't maybe feel quite as supportive as, say, the Polestar, but they're way better than the Tesla and they're better than the Hyundai Ioniq 6. So they're between those two cars and, as I say, the BMW and Polestar. And also the ID7, in fairness, because the ID7 have got excellent seats. So, BMW, Volkswagen and Polestar are right at the top, Hyundai and Tesla at the bottom, BYD somewhere in the middle in terms of the seat and the driving position. You, again, like the BMW, you do tend to sit in the car. It's got a nice driving position. Your relationship with the controls feels good. The column stalks, they're just a finger stretch away. And as I say, there's enough physical buttons to be getting on with. So all of that's fine. Everything is standard on the car. Everything comes as standard. So head-up display, massive big glass panoramic sunroof, double wireless charging pad there, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, these quilted kind of leather seats. That's all standard. They're heated, they're electrically adjustable, they're ventilated as well. It's just superb in terms of its tally of equipment, so there's nothing you can really fault there. Good storage as well, so you obviously get your two cup holders there. You've got a centre armrest that lifts up, which is massive. You've also got this under console area here that you can drop an iPad into, or other little bits and pieces in terms of sunglasses or whatever. And then sort of like relatively decent door bins. They're not as long as the BMWs, they don't feel quite as well lined, but again, you've got other storage around the car, which is good enough anyway. The driver instrumentation panel in front of you, this square display here, that's all right. It's not as clear cut as the BMW. You can configure it as much as the BMWs in terms of what you can see here, but you can do a little bit. You know, you can change, you know, what you see in the middle of it, depending obviously on what you want to see. So you want your climate control up there, or to check your messages, or you know, the ADAS system, the advanced driver assistance systems, they're all in there. And of course you get all the relevant information: speed, power usage, distance to go, battery state of charge, and then across the top you've got time, outside temperature, and obviously your gear selection and your mode as well, what you're in. So all the information's there. It's just not as nicely configurable, or dare I suggest as aesthetically nice, as pleasing as you get in, say, the BMW. But on the whole, you can't complain with what they actually shows you, in fairness. So yeah, that's good, and it's visible, unlike, as I say, some cars, you know, that is actually very visible. When you look through there, it's really nice. Plus, as I say, you also get a head-up display on the Excellence model, so that's good. So on the whole, again, like the exterior, BYD's best effort when it comes to, oh, sorry, it's got voice activation.
Sorry, try me again.
Cancel. It has voice activation as well, and I'll talk to you about that a bit later as well. But as I say, it's the best effort when it comes to the interior as well. It's not as gimmicky, not as silly as, say, the Atto 3 with its kind of big kind of transmission lever thing there, and then kind of swoopy plasticness of the Dolphin. There's a much more kind of grown-up feel, much more sophisticated, much more designed interior to this one, not over-designed. This one feels proper, and I do like this. As I say, it's BYD's best effort, definitely. Is it better than the BMW's interior? In places, yes. In other places, no. So again, it kind of comes down to what you prefer. But don't think that this is a sort of like a cheap alternative, because you don't get that impression when you sat here. Now, if you watched last week's review of the BMW i4 eDrive 35, like I alluded to at the beginning of this week's twin test, the eDrive 35 has a smaller battery than the eDrive 40. It's a 67 kilowatt hour usable capacity you get in this car, and that should see a WLTP range of up to 288 miles. Charging speeds, however, are good at 180 kilowatts, and the car also comes with an onboard 11 kilowatt charger. So your usual benchmark 10 to 80% is done in round about half an hour from a charger capable of delivering that speed. If you're charging up from full from your 7 kilowatt wall box, then you're looking at round about 10 hours 45 minutes. Now the BYD, well, BYD batteries are their things because that's how they started. They're a battery company and they build their own batteries. This is the innovative Blade battery, and it is a bigger capacity at 82.5 kilowatt hours. So in other words, it's on a par with the eDrive 40 i4. The WLTP range of this car is 323 miles, but believe it or not, its charging speed is slightly less than the i4 at 150 kilowatts, meaning your 10 to 80% is done in round about 37 minutes, so a few minutes longer, but bear in mind it is a bigger capacity. Charging up from your 7 kilowatt wall box at home means it's going to take roughly 13.5 hours. Now, like the BMW, you also get an onboard 11 kilowatt charger as standard with the Seal. The other thing with the Seal is it has a heat pump as standard, and you also get vehicle to load. However, both cars, in terms of the battery construction, they use LFP batteries. In other words, they're cobalt free in the construction. But where the BYD wins is the way that the battery is actually constructed into the car. In other words, it forms part of the platform, this e-platform 3.0. So of course, as we saw in terms of performance and handling, that gives a lot of rigidity to the platform, but also makes it very, very safe indeed. All right, so I drove, obviously, the i4 eDrive 35 in last week's road test review and gave you sort of like the full kind of synopsis of what I thought of the car back then. But it's worthwhile going over again now we've got it with BYD. So 286 brake horsepower. So as I say, it's less powerful. So as well as having the smaller battery over the eDrive 40, it's also got a less powerful motor. But 286 brake horsepower is still a reasonable amount of power. 0 to 60, 6 seconds. So, as I said last week, let's call it swift rather than fast. However, what I will say is it feels quicker than the numbers suggest. It genuinely does. I don't think it feels a particularly slow car. You know, what's nice about the BMW, however, is the way that the car kind of interacts with you as a driver. Now, I know that sounds a bit corny and maybe a bit cheesy as well, but let me explain what I mean. Your relationship with the car when you're sitting in the driver's seat is superb. You've got an excellent driving position. It's the straight ahead. It's exactly as you expect a BMW. You can get the seat into the exact position you want. It's a beautifully comfortable sports seat. It's got just the right amount of support around about as well, so good lateral support. You can extend the squab, the headrests in the right place, and then of course the wheels within nice easy reach. That adjusts for reach and for rake. So, and then the pedals are dead ahead as well. So your driving position is superb. That's the first thing. The second thing is all the controls. It's a bit like, sort of like, you know, as the sort of like the old BMWs from the 80s, the E33 series and the E28 series. It feels like it just kind of wraps around you a little bit more. Then they're going. So all the controls are like literally a finger stretch away. You know, the iDrive controller, the buttons for changing the driving modes, which I'll talk about in a second, and the screens up there, it's kind of angled in towards the driver. You get a good view of the display in front of you, which, as I said, you can configure if you want, and of course you've got your head-up display if you've got that option on the car. So in terms of your relationship with the car and its controls, that's the first thing that you really notice about the i4. The second thing is how the car responds to your inputs. And this might sound a little bit odd, there's almost a mechanical feel to it. There's almost a combustion engine car feel to this car. In other words, the weight of the accelerator pedal, the weight and the progression of the brake pedal, the sort of like the oily kind of slickness of the steering, makes you feel like you're driving a BMW. You know, with a combustion engine, a big nice straight six up front. It just feels exactly like they've always felt, and I think that's a good thing. If you're coming from you know, say, I don't know, a 335i or a 340i that you've had before, or 330 diesel or whatever, and you'd go on electric for the first time, you'll be surprised how familiar this all feels to you. And I mean that in a good way, because it's a very easy car just to get in and drive well. As I say, the steering's got a nice kind of oiliness to it. When you turn the wheel, there's an immediate response. You know exactly where the front wheels are pointing. The chassis obviously is the rear bias because it's a rear mounted motor. You don't get the dual motor that obviously you've got in the BYD until you move up to the M50 model on the i4. And as I say, that's not the one to have in my book. It's almost like the power overwhelms the chassis in that car. I think when the power's just below the ability of the chassis, like it is in here and the 40, that's the pick, I think, of the range. These two cars are the pick of the range. And I say they do drive, I think, slightly better. There's less, obviously, weight at the front because obviously you don't have the front-mounted motor, and therefore there's no corruption to the actual steering wheel. Let me talk about the driving modes, as I said. So effectively there's three. There's Eco, Comfort and Sport, as you expect, because that's pretty much what you get in every car. But the Sport has two settings. So you've got Sport and Sport Individual. So you can go into sort of like the iDrive and set it up how you want it. So if you want sort of like the steering to have a slightly more kind of lightness to it, you can change that, or the throttle response to be slightly different. And when you go into Sport Individual, that's your kind of settings. And like it does in the BYD, it stays in that setting when you stop the car and get back in it. So it doesn't default to Comfort, you know, and you've got to change it. It defaults to that. That's it. The brakes. Well, you've got brake regen, so you go D and B, and when you go into B, it's quite a powerful regen, in fairness. Is it one pedal driving? Probably not far off. Let me turn down this road and let's see if it is. Let me just see if it'll actually bring the car to a complete stop. Get down this country road. Right, let me see if there's nothing behind me. Let's go along 30 miles an hour and off the accelerator. Yep, brings it to a stop and holds it on the brakes. Sorry, I need to move this car by me. But yeah, brings it to a stop and holds it on the brakes. So that's good. But there's not the sort of like the constant adjustability of it. So you've got D or B on the brakes. That for me is probably enough. That's enough adjustment in some respects, especially when you've got the brake regen as strong as that. I know I like the ones you can really adjust, like the Hyundais and the Kias, but that's okay actually. Better than the Stellantis cars that don't do that as much. what else is there to say that I haven't already said before? It's a proper BMW. It's a driver's car. If you are a driver and you want to enjoy that kind of Sunday morning blast, I think the i4 is a great car. I really do. Is it worth the extra over the BYD? I suppose it depends on what you're buying the car for. I'll reserve judgment till the end of the video, but what I will say, as I say, this is a really, really lovely and sporty car to drive. I like it. So, BYD Seal Excellence. Well, as I say, this is the all-wheel drive model. You don't get sort of like different trim levels like you do with the BMW, like Sport and M Sport and such like, and then obviously choose your single or dual motor. If you go for the design model, that's the single motor car. If you go for the Excellence, excuse me, that's the all-wheel drive one. 523 brake horsepower. So it's a chunky bit of power going through front and rear axles, which is good, you know, edge traction. And 0 to 60 time on this car is 3.8 seconds, as we can see with a little badge that's on the back. So quite a healthy bit different to the BMW. But how does it drive? Well, it drives really well. That's what I'm going to say. It doesn't feel as tactile and quite as fluent as the BMW. And I don't mean that in a horrible way, because I really like this car. It's a really good car to drive. And it doesn't feel, the power doesn't overwhelm it, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't feel like, as I say, remember when you first drove a kind of Tesla Model 3 and it's like, whoa! It doesn't feel like that. It feels well tied down and well kept and kept well in check. It just doesn't have that kind of connection with the rest of the car that the BMW has. You know, the steering's nice, you know, as I say, it's nice. It doesn't feel quite as quick as the BMWs or as precise. I'm going to talk about these beeps and bongs because that is something that really infuriates me about this car. So that's the first thing. The second thing that you notice is the ride quality is a good deal firmer. Now, it is on bigger wheels than the BMW, it's on 19-inch wheels. But even so, I don't think it's the wheels. I think it is the suspension. You can feel much more of the road surface with the BYD than you can in the BMW. It doesn't feel as well judged, the damper settings. Now, BYD do have this sort of trick kind of variable damper that they've engineered for the Seal. And yeah, shut up. Yes, it's good. It is good, but it's not as good as sort of like the BMW's kind of passive system. It's just not quite polished enough. Right, I'm going to talk about these beeps and bongs because they're driving me mad. Right, obviously it's got a huge amount of driver assistance systems fitted to it, as is now law, and you can turn them off, but you got to go into the screen. Now, people were saying to me on my original road test, you say, oh, you just want to turn things on and off, you don't get a screen, Bryan, you use voice activation. All right, let's do that then, shall we? Hi BYD, switch off speed limit warning. Say that again. It's not done it. It comes up and says, say that again. It doesn't do it. Just see. Let me turn it, because I've got the volume off because I've got the radio on. Hang on. Oh, I just turn that down. Hi BYD. Switch off speed limit warning.
Say that again.
Cancel. It doesn't work. You've got to go into the screen to turn it off. Oh, it's so bloody annoying. Ugh. Right, enough of that. So yeah, it has got all those systems. And obviously when you do turn them off, they default back on when you switch the car off and go back into it. And they're buried. They really are buried in that screen. I really don't like that. It's not a good move. Anyway, we're talking about how the car drives. So on the face of it, yes, the car drives very, very well. I would say it's on a par with, say, something like the Hyundai Ioniq 6, Tesla Model 3. It's that good, I think. It just lacks that final polish that the BMW, what makes the BMW a proper real driver's car. So that's what I would say on this. It is blindingly fast, as you'd expect. The only thing I will say is when you put your foot down, there's a slight hesitation in the throttle. There's a slight hesitation. It's like you've almost kind of woken it up. It's going, well, oh right, yeah, let's go. It's weird. It's just a very, I mean, I'm talking about a split second. But again, it's that kind of tactility of controls that the BMW doesn't have to worry about. The BMW just does it. It just goes. Right, enough of that. Yes, you've got different driving modes, and they're, again, like the BMW, really accessible. There's a little scroll wheel here. So you've got normal, eco and sport, as you would expect. When you go into sort of like, you know, sport, everything kind of glows red. And like the BMW, when you switch the car off and then go back to it, it stays in the mode you had it in. And I like that. I do like that. That's a really nice thing to do. Just wish the bloody safety systems would stay off. So that's excellent. There's also adjustable brake regeneration, but unlike the BMW where it's on the gear selector here, you've got to go into the screen and you've got to set it up as either sport or comfort. You know, so obviously I think sport, like I've got, yeah, sport's completely off, comfort you've got it on. So you do have it, but as I say, you've got to kind of set it up through the screen. You've got to go in there to do it. I like the BMW fact you just pull back on the transmission toggle again. Talking of transmission toggle, I really like this little crystal, this little glass toggle switch. It's really tactile. It's a really nice little thing just to hook your fingers on and pull it back to drive. I do like that. And like the BMW, there's a good driving position. You sit nice and in the car. You don't sit on it like you do in the Tesla. You don't quite have the same kind of depth of lowering the seat that you can in the BMW. You can't get as low down as the BMW, but the driving position is very good. And there's not a lot of complaints from me with regards to the driving position. You can't extend the squab of the seats, but they're quite well padded at the front. And for a shorty like me, there's just enough knee support behind. They don't have the same amount of lateral grip that the BMW has, but as I say, they're way better than the seats that you get in the Tesla Model 3. So, summary: very fast, very good car to drive. Suspension not quite as kind of adept at adjusting to road conditions as the BMWs do. The brakes good level of regen, but as I say, the downside is you've got to delve into the screen. Steering's nice, driving position, as I say, is nice. The BMW is by far the more focused driver's car between the two of them, but in terms of how the BYD would be to live with on a day-to-day basis, I wouldn't have any complaints recommending this car at all from that point of view. It's a very easy car to get in and drive. It's fast when you want it to be. It's nice and easy when you don't want it to be.
Say that again?
Oh shush, cancel. Every time you say yeah, that springs up. So yeah, so every time, sorry, what was I saying? Yeah, so as I say, its usability as a day-to-day car, absolutely, I can't fault it. As I say, the only thing that you notice, as I say, in terms of the ride quality, is that slightly more firm and more chattery suspension. You'll probably see the camera shake a little bit more than you get in the BMW. That's it. Oh, one thing I should say, however, one thing that is something that's worth noting. If you remember, if you have watched my original road test on the BYD Seal, I did say that I thought the road noise was quite vocal on harsh surfaces. That was down to the tyres, definitely now. So these are now running Continental tyres, these ones. There was a Chinese brand that was on their first initial press cars. These are Continentals, and there is a marked difference in the refinement of the car. I.e., you don't get that road noise that I had on that initial road test. So I am very, very pleased to report on that. But as I say, you can feel a bit more chatter through the suspension when it's on a rougher road than in the BMW. But again, Not uncomfortably so, but you can just feel it. Other than that, this is a really good. This is BYD's best car today, and it stands head and shoulders next to all the other cars in its class. It doesn't feel like a poor relation, even if it does make those really annoying beeps at me. Now, of course, the big gulf between the two of them that we've been talking about right at the start of the video is the price. The BMW i4 eDrive 35 is the new starter model in the i4 range, and it kicks off at just over £50,000 in sport trim. If you want an M Sport like this, then you've got to find £52,000, but as I say, this car, the way it's spec'd up, and as I say, to be fair, as I said last week's review, it's not overly optioned. It's got a couple of packs on it and metallic paint, but in terms of its equipment tally, it's on a par with the BYD. This is £60,350 as it stands at time of filming. Whereas the BYD, the Excellence, the top of the range Excellence, with that bigger battery, with that bigger range, with that more performance, is £48,675. If you want to go cheaper, then you go for the design model, which still gets the big battery, so it still gets the range. In fact, if not a little bit more range, for a lot less. And the gulf of that £12,000 widens even further if you go for the single motor design model in the BYD. The other thing that BMW have against it is it's just a 3-year warranty, whereas on the BYD it's 6. So what other cars might you consider other than these two if you wanted an all-electric kind of compact sports saloon? Well, of course, the usual suspect is the Tesla Model 3, and of course it's out in its newly revised guise, which we absolutely love. You know, it's a really good car, that new Tesla Model 3, and it's easy to see why. It's probably one of the best-selling cars in the world, not just best-selling electric cars, one of the best-selling cars. It really is very good indeed. There's the Polestar 2 as well, a channel favourite of ours, and of course it received a massive upgrade last year for the 24 model year. You know, rear drive, chassis bias, you know, different batteries, you know, some slight styling changes and equipment changes. So yeah, that's worthy of your consideration too. Of course, last year we got to drive the new Hyundai Ioniq 6, and Hyundai are one of the best when it comes to electric cars. Now, the styling might not be to everyone's taste, but I have to say, it is to our taste, and we really do like the Ioniq 6. It's a great car. And of course, just recently we've driven the Volkswagen ID.7, another car that's come into the class, and certainly when it comes to accommodation and family car, it's probably the biggest because it is a big car, and it certainly gives the accommodation up. And that is also going to be available, bear in mind, in tourer form, the estate model, which has just recently been shown. So that certainly gives you food for thought. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new BMW i4 eDrive 35. We like its chassis dynamics, its build quality, and the driver environment. We don't like, well, the styling is still a little bit fussy and very divisive, especially against the other cars in the class. The packaging, especially rear seat accommodation, is compromised by the internal combustion engine platform that it shares with the regular 4 Series. And of course, the high price and poor value for money. And here's what we like and don't like about the BYD Seal Excellence. Well, we like its styling, the standard level of equipment, and of course its warranty package. We don't like the intrusive safety systems, the fact that too many functions are buried in sub-menus within the screen, and there are still some interior plastics which could be better. If we were to travel back in time, not long, 10, 15 years say, it would be almost inconceivable to think back then we could compare a Chinese car to a BMW. And yet here we are in 2024 doing just that. But then should it be a surprise? Because we saw what the Japanese manufacturers did to the Europeans in the 70s and 80s, and what the Koreans have been doing over the last 10, 15 years. And they're churning out some really good product. And we know how fast the EV world moves. So no, it shouldn't really be that much of a surprise. But would you really buy a BYD over a BMW? Well, when it comes down to it, in terms of a driver's car, there's no doubt in my mind that the i4 is still the one to have. There's still a tactility to it, there's still a fluency in its chassis that makes you feel, as a driver, as corny as it is to say, at one with the car. It's still a great sports saloon, and it's easy to understand why BMW have got the reputation they have for building brilliant driver's cars, and obviously hence the old tagline of the ultimate driving machine. But at this point in time, when cost of living is at the forefront of everybody's mind and value for money is key and people want the biggest bang for the buck, then in every other conceivable way, the BYD is the better car. It's got a bigger battery and it gives a bigger range. It's better equipped, it has a longer warranty. And of course, in terms of its cost, it's £12,000 less than this car. So as good as the i4 is, it has to get second place and give way to the BYD Seal. Thank you for watching this week's episode of AutoEV. As always, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below, because then that way you'll get a notification of when our next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you've watched it, if you have enjoyed this week's episode, then make sure you give it a thumbs up, and don't forget, leave me your thoughts and comments down below. Would you buy a BYD over a BMW, or would you spend the extra to get that blue and white propeller on the front? I'm sorry, there's a really big plane going overhead right now, and this is about the 20th take I've done, so you'll have to put up with that. As I say, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and let me know what your thoughts are on the AutoEV channel as a whole. Thank you very much, Emirates. Anyway, social media, we're across all social media channels as well, so Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, TikTok. Please give us a follow there, because that does help us as well. And maybe this is the first time you've tuned into us and you're wondering, are they an aviation channel? We're not, we're a motoring channel, and we review electric cars. So if you're looking for a new electric car, then make sure that you stick on the YouTube channel, because every new EV that comes onto the UK market, we put it through the full AutoEV road test to make sure that you get as much information as you can before you go and sign on the dotted line. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. I will see you again soon.